Have you ever thought, while walking in the woods, man, I would love to just disconnect and live in the woods, right? No people, no technology, no taxes, just, no hands right now, Mike, no hands. But, well, that is what a man named Christopher Wright, that's what he did. He drove to Maine and left his keys in his car in the front seat unlocked, just left them and walked into the woods without a map, very little food, and he was gone for 27 years. He did, 27 years. He went in when he was 20, and he was caught stealing food from a camp kitchen right nearby when he was 47 years old. And there's a book that I read called The Stranger in the Woods, The Extraordinary True Story of the Last True Hermit by Michael Finkel. Christopher Wright was known by many as the Hermit of the North Pond, if you're familiar with Maine. And there's a place called the North Pond, and it's, people usually have summer homes there, but a few people do live there year-round. But he claimed to have never lit a fire in 27 years because smoke would, and he was relatively close to this camp, and he knew that smoke would attract people. And so think about that if you know anything about winters in Maine. And he would go and steal things to support himself, mainly books and food, no money, no valuables, no jewelry, nothing like that, because he was off the grid. Jewelry, what's jewelry going to do? What's money going to do? And so before he left for the woods, people who knew him knew that he was a man of few words, kept to himself, enjoyed solitude, which makes sense. When he was in prison, because again, you can't steal for 27 years and not go to prison, so he was in prison, and I remember this part in the book. He was amazed at how being around people was so hard for him. He said, everything comes so fast, he would say, from facial expressions, body language, and just plain speech and communication, and listening to other people. He just said relationships are so hard. That's what he said. And I wanted to begin with Christopher Wright, because in a way, Jesus is saying the same thing in the Sermon on the Mount, where we've been as a church for a number of months now. We've just been slowly walking through Jesus' most famous sermons in Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. And mainly chapter 7 so far is dealing with relational conflict, right? And Jesus is going to, or has in Matthew chapter 7, if you got your Bibles, please turn there. But he's given us parables and riddles and talking about judging people. If you remember from last week, Jesus opens the sermon section saying, just do not judge. Just don't do it. We're not good at it. Don't judge. I mean, that's just baseline. Don't judge, or you will be judged. And then the next little parable that we looked at last week, if you really feel like you need to judge, here's how you do it right. And Jesus talks about the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye, and you've got a plank in your own eye. Again, we looked at that last week, which talks about just, whatever you're going to say, whatever you're going to jump on somebody and say, make sure you take your medicine first, right? Like you look in the mirror first and see what you have going on. And this morning, we're going to look at another riddle, another parable that just extends these lessons about judging. And again, relational conflict. It's real easy if you've read through the Sermon on the Mount to look at this chapter in particular, Matthew chapter 7, and just read these parables and just think that they're totally talking about just different things. But what if they're not? Like, what if we're supposed to see them all connected and that they really are about judging people and relational conflict. And so, so Jesus is going to get us there. And I promise you, Jesus' solution is not just go live in the woods for 27 years. It's not that. He's going to give us actual wisdom for how to deal with people. And so, we got it right here. Matthew chapter 7, verse 6. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. This is a fun little riddle, isn't it? So it seems to be about that that things are incompatible. Okay, that things that you shouldn't put together. Pearls and pigs do not go together. Pearls are valuable, and yet in the riddle, they're put with things that cannot truly value them. Pigs don't know what to do with pearls. They can't eat them. They can't string them on a necklace and put them on their neck. They don't. Or even if you did that, they wouldn't know. They think that's uncomfortable, right? They wouldn't know what you're doing. Pearls and pigs do not go together. Pigs think pearls are utterly useless. Again, they're not food. And so pigs have no capacity to truly value pearls. And so what are pigs going to actually do if you throw pearls at them? They're just going to trample them. They, stomp in the mud. And meanwhile, we are like, no, what are you doing? Those are valuable. Those are great, right? Like we would look and just, we would go crazy because pearls are beautiful. Now let's look at the other image. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Now here's where we have to stretch a little bit because we live in a culture where dogs are loved by many, many people. I'm a dog lover. I love dogs, right? But sometimes I think we go a little too far. I mean, we've got dog sweaters and dog hotels now, and there's funerals for dogs, and we spend a lot of money on dogs. And I've seen, and maybe it was a meme or a t-shirt, but I love dogs more than people, I think I've seen. And so it's just, again, but if you've ever traveled outside of these United States, right, if you've ever done that, you will know that you'll get another picture of dogs that is far closer to how Jesus would have seen dogs in his day, right? Dogs are scavengers. Dogs are, they're dirty. They're wild packs of dogs, feral dogs, mangy dogs. Again, they can be quite dangerous if you bring them into your home. Not that they would get, tear you up, but what they carry on them, it's just dangerous, right? And dogs in Jesus' day were ritually impure. They were on the non-kosher list along with pigs. They were associated with death and disease and impurity. I know that's hard for us to square because we just love dogs so much, but remember what dogs in Jesus' day would have been like. So here's the question with this riddle. What are the holy pearls? What and who are dogs and pigs? And why is Jesus saying this? And why is Matthew putting this right after the parable about the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and the log in your own eye? Great questions, right? These are great questions. And so pigs and dogs are, again, they're on the non-kosher list, right? So if you think of like just that they're not non-Israelite, Gentile. If they're people, they're Gentiles. They don't know the law, right? Again, we got to take the image of pigs and dogs and put them on people and just Gentiles, that they don't know the law, they don't understand the law. And pearls, that was a common metaphor for that rabbis would refer to for wisdom, right? The wisdom books of the Torah, or the Bible, Job, Ecclesiastes, Proverbs. These are wisdom. Those were known as pearls, and so what I believe this little riddle is getting at is this idea about being careful who you share wisdom about God with. You don't just hand out what is sacred to people that cannot understand it, cannot ingest it. Meaning, there will be moments in your life when you're so getting worked over by the teachings of Jesus, right? In the Sermon on the Mount, for example, right? That you're seeing the world differently, you're seeing everything differently, and you want to go to everyone and just kind of explain what's happening, and they might not understand it. They might not hear you right, and because there's no category. If they don't know Jesus, and you're telling them about what Jesus is doing in your life, who knows what could happen? There might be some relational conflict that could happen. Mission trips bring this up really sharply. Again, we just got back from the mission trip to Mexico, and we weren't even gone 7 days, but so much happened in those, not even a week, right? Back home, it's like nothing changed, but then you come back and everything's changed. And so it's really hard to explain to that coworker, that friend, what Jesus did to you and what you experienced. And I remember talking to Dan Walgren, again, who's going to be the speaker at the men's wild game feed, and he was the leader on our mission trip, but he told me the story about there for about 2 years when he was young, in his 20s, he and a buddy just went and traveled the world, literally for either a year or 2 years, I can't remember, but just did all sorts of things, helped a lot of people out, served among the least, the last, the lost, and then, Dan's a farm kid. He went back home to his dad, literally in the tractor, and is just trying to explain all that happened. And the conversation didn't go well, to say the least. Just because, and Dan was, remember you when you were 20. Remember that. And you're seeing a lot of things. And so he had this attitude of, Dad, you just don't understand and all this. Dad did understand, but it's like throwing pearls to pigs. You gotta make a judgment call on what you share and maybe what you, and again, things got really good after that, right, with him and his dad, but unloading a ton of stuff on a guy that didn't travel with you, it can be hard. It can be really hard. And so we have to judge. We have to consider, is this person capable of understanding what I'm trying to say? It's a judgment call. Just living life, you have to make certain judgment calls. Jesus brings this up, and the Bible is getting to this as well. I want to look at a proverb. I just want to mess with you a little bit. I want to look at a proverb. Proverbs chapter 26. These are two back-to-back proverbs that contradict each other, but they're supposed to contradict each other. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, do not, and this is Proverbs 26, 4 and 5. Do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you yourself will be just like him. The very next verse, answer a fool according to his folly, or he will be wise in his own eyes. Now, which is it? What are we supposed to do here? Well, okay, let's take one at a time. Verse 4, have you ever met someone that was maybe caught up in conspiracy theories? Right? Maybe they thought the earth was flat. or whatever it is. We didn't go to the moon or whatever it is. Verse 4 talks about just there's a warning in engaging with fools on their terms, right? Like if you argue with a fool in a foolish way, you risk lowering yourself to their level and you get caught up in pointless debates that don't go anywhere, right? But then there are some times when you need to answer a fool according to their folly. You just do. You have to stop and say, you're wrong in this area. You just are, and I fear that you're leading other people, and they must be confronted because they're misleading a lot of people, and that's a judgment call that you have to make. There's just lots of these areas in moments in life where you have to just look at this situation and ask yourself, do I go there with this person? Or not? Do I just let them, let them go? Or do I engage? It's discernment is what we're looking for here. Now, coming back to the pigs and parables teaching, again, why did Matthew place this teaching right after the parable about the speck in your brother's eye and the log in your own? Again, we got to back up. First things first. Remember, Jesus just says, "Do not judge. Don't judge," right? And don't condemn is a maybe a better word, right? Don't condemn. Don't stand in the place of condemnation over another person's value, right? Just don't do that. You're not a good judge of that. Second, if you're going to do it, instead of jumping in, again, you take the medicine first. You look in the mirror first. Whatever you're going to say to them, how are you doing with all of that, right? Because we see things, we just jump, right? And then third, Jesus has given us are you wise enough to understand who you're sharing with? Where are they at spiritually? Do they understand? Are they going to be capable of understanding what Jesus and God is doing in your life? And so again, these are all three little parables back to back to back. Notice how they don't really arm yourself with a formula about how or what to do in different scenarios that you find yourselves in. Because we all have found ourselves in different scenarios, different people we're talking to. It doesn't give you a formula. Instead, it shapes you into a kind of person that sees a need and desire for wisdom. And the search for wisdom is exactly what the next teaching is about in the Sermon on the Mount, which is all about your prayer life. So this is verse 7. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. And to the one who knocks, the door will be opened. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you're evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? So on the one hand, this teaching, it's not that complicated, right? It's easier than the pigs and pearls riddle, right? Jesus invites his followers to have a view of God that he has, that of a good father, that he longs to give good gifts to his children, that God wants us to ask in prayer for things. Ask, seek, knock. Again, And remember where this is couched, it's not just ask for things, it's ask for help in relational conflict. Ask God, go to God about, when you're having a problem with a coworker, a friend, a family member, right? Maybe there's been some strife, maybe there's some past hurts. Is your reaction to go to the Lord in prayer for how do I deal with this person whom I love? How do ask God to help you navigate the issue with the person? Is it in your head to kind of ask, okay, is this a beam in the eye scenario? Is this a pearls to pigs scenario? What's the next right thing I'm supposed to do with this person that's in my life that I care a lot about? So again, do I keep quiet? Am I looking at myself in the mirror? Do I speak? Do you feel the tension here, right? Hopefully you've got somebody in your head or multiple people in your head on how do I live my life with this person in it instead of just going to the woods alone. What's super amazing about this is so in the Bible, there's echoes of this teaching in the Bible. And so Bible scholars for a long time, they've known, I'm not a Bible scholar, they've known that the book of James, everybody, the book of James is a book, the author has spent time soaking in the Sermon on the Mount. Like, you can just tell he uses words and phrases. Now, again, it's not like in order. It's all jumbled up, but it's there. It's somebody who has spent a long time, dwelling in the teachings of the Sermon on the Mount. And I just want to show you what because almost James could be like a commentary on one of the first commentaries on the Sermon on the Mount. So I want to quickly go to James 1, 5 through 8, and just see if you hear it. Just see if you hear what James is talking about. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. And then he goes on a beautiful, wonderful tangent. But then skipping down to verse 16 of chapter 1. Don't be deceived, my dear brothers and sisters. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. So James believes that what we really need to ask for is wisdom. Wisdom. Because you can read, and a lot of people have done this, you can take Matthew chapter 7, the ask, seek, knock, and just rip it out of context and ask for riches and prosperity and health and wealth and, health for people that you love. But Jesus isn't, it's couched in relational conflict. Jesus isn't saying, ask and you will receive and knock, about it's not a genie in the bottle situation, folks, where we can get, and a lot of people have been hurt because that's what they think. They think this is unattached from what Jesus is talking about, and we can just ask, seek, knock for whatever we want. And that leads to not good places with God. God knows that relationships are hard. And yeah, that's why he gives us this at the end of all of these parables about relational conflict. And so, yeah, and we shouldn't be that cocky to believe that we know how to handle each and every situation that we come across, that we know how to deal with this person in this scenario. No, we don't. I don't. I don't know about you guys, but I need help. I need wisdom with how to walk with people. Again, how do you know when to draw a hard boundary? How do you know when to be generous with this person? When do I make a judgment call? When do I not? When do I speak? When do I be silent? When do I answer a fool according to his folly? And when do I not? What we need is a flow chart, right? Like I would love a, flow chart. We don't get that. We don't get a flow chart. What we get is prayer. That's what we get. We get prayer, and wisdom will flow out of a deep interpersonal dependence on the presence and the voice of God in our daily lives. We are to talk to him and listen to him daily. Listen, you can memorize a lot of scripture, and you could be a Timothy Award winner in Awana, but the thing about life is that it just keeps happening. And so much of it is outside of your control. You have no control over other people. You don't. You think you do, you don't. And so we have to discern what the right thing to do is in every situation. And the way we do that is to keep a live conversation going with our Heavenly Father. Leave room for God. Don't just react to stuff. If you just react to stuff, it does sound a lot like what James is going to with the waves of, but if I could update that to modern day translation, this is I don't know what they're called, but I've seen them at like gas stations in big cities where they're just the air people that go this way and that way. And we are like that. We will just be, go, the wind blows this way. And that is what we'll be like. Because we'll just react to ping pong on everybody in every scenario. And it's not fun. And you know that. It's not fun to be this guy. Instead of grounded and wise and knowing what to do with every person that we come across. There's a story from the Old Testament that this whole discussion reminds me a lot about. It's out of 1 Kings 3, and I just want to share this with you. 1 Kings 3 through 15. This is about Solomon, the wisest man that lived. So it goes like this. Solomon loved the Lord and followed all the decrees of his father David, except that Solomon too offered sacrifice and burnt incense at the local places of worship. The most important of these places of worship was at Gibeon. So the king went there and sacrificed 1,000 burnt offerings. That night the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream, and God said, "What do you want? Ask, and I will give it to you." And Solomon replied, You showed great and faithful love to your servant, my father David, because he was honest and true and faithful to you. And you have continued to show this great and faithful love to him today by giving him a son to sit on his throne. And Solomon goes on in verse 7, "Now, O Lord my God, you have made me king instead of my father David, but I'm like a little child, a little kid who doesn't know his way around. And here I am in the midst of my own chosen people, a great nation, so great and numerous they cannot be counted." Verse 9, Give me an understanding heart so that I can govern your people well and know the difference between right and wrong. For who by himself is able to govern this great people of yours? The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for wisdom. So God replied, because you have asked for wisdom in governing my people with justice and have not asked for a long life or wealth or the death of your enemies, I will give you what you asked for. I will give you a wise and understanding heart, such as no one else has had or ever will have. And I will also give you what you did not ask for, riches and fame. No other king in all the world will be compared to you for the rest of your life. And if you follow me and obey my decrees and my commands as your father David did, I will give you a long life. Then Solomon woke up and realized it had been a dream. Now there's lots I could say here about. I love the narrative, but it just seems like God over and over and over in the Bible longs to give us wisdom, a discerning heart to distinguish between right and wrong. And again, Solomon could have asked for anything. He was a young king. He could have asked for anything. And yet he humbled himself and he just asked for wisdom. And God gave it to him and so much more. And so God tells us, ask, seek, knock. And I just want you to notice the progression there, right? Asking, we all ask for things. Asking is pretty normal. You're going to ask for things tomorrow, today, you're going to ask for things. Seeking's a bit different, right? Seeking is just more. Like you're really intently looking for it. You're on. I just picture on my hands and knees, like looking, right? And then knocking is even more still, right? There's a persistence about knocking. I'm going to make noises now, right? I'm knocking. All the others, maybe you could do it silently, but knocking, I mean, there's noise there. And so it's ask, seek, knock. Now, it's important to bring up, especially in a passage about prayer, the reality of unanswered prayer, right? I mean, we just have to go there because the way that this sounds, the way this teaching is, even in relational conflict, right? It sounds like every time you should get an answer. And that's just not the lived reality that a lot of people live with. We ask and we ask and we seek and we seek and we're knocking. And it can just be like there's just silence on the other end. And I don't know what to do with that, folks. I mean, and it seems like all the things you've heard or I've heard that we come across, they don't answer it, right? Because it's not a lack of faith sometimes. It's not that you didn't believe hard enough sometimes. It's not that you should keep on asking sometimes. I mean, I don't know. So oftentimes with unanswered prayer, it feels like I didn't get the formula right. And I don't think it's any of that. I don't know what to tell you because no answer comes to the answer that our heart yearns for. And so what do? Instead of looking at your unanswered prayer, what Jesus would tell us and is telling us is look to the character of God that Jesus is pointing to, that he is a good father, that he is. He looked to his character. Again, verse 9 on this. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you, though you are evil, you parents know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him. So bottom line, life is hard. There is no way around that. And we live on this wonderful, beautiful planet with other people. And there's no way around that. And we have to get along. We just do. And Jesus has given us lots of teaching about the various scenarios of relational conflict that you're going to be dealing with. We shouldn't judge. If you feel the need to judge, look at yourself first. Take the medicine. We sometimes need to judge what we share with unbelievers. We just do. Because they might not be able to ingest it. And above all, we need to remember prayer. That's the tool we have. Remember prayer. Pray, and the character of God, that he is a good father. And then he ends with this parenting metaphor. And because I am in the thick of parenting 4 kids myself, I want to talk. I guess there is one thing about unanswered prayer that maybe you'll find this helpful, maybe not. But again, I've got 4 kids. We're training them how to be humans in the world. We're training them how to deal with people. We're training them how to share. We're training them about emotions and all of that. And sometimes my kids will come up to me and they'll ask, Dad, what do I do with with this person or this thing? And I just have to look at them, and I just look. Sometimes I don't even say anything. I just look at them, and you know what to do. You know what to do. We've been over this. We've trained this. Now it's hard. It's hard to share your toys or what. It's hard. But you know what to do. Sometimes I think we want a voice from heaven to do this, do boop, 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 right? That's what I want sometimes. And so sometimes you know what to do. And if it matches what Jesus would do, you know what to do. And so again, most of the time when I'm yearning in prayer, when I'm asking, when I'm seeking, when I'm knocking, I'm reminded of God's presence, that I'm not alone, that he's with me. And then I'm going to say this too. Sometimes, folks, I've spent a lot of time on unanswered prayer. Sometimes he does give that lightning bolt answer. Sometimes when you're asking and seeking and knocking and you don't know what to do with this person in your life that you love, sometimes he will give you an answer. Be ready. Be ready to hear the answer and then do it. Case in point, again, this is fresh because it's real, but the Mexico trip, I know you're going to be, it just happened, and I went on the trip, so it's awesome, but there we were, 19 people going to Mexico. Before the trip, we didn't know what we were going to do, right? We had raised all this money, and Dan gave us an option. Are we going to build a house, or are we going to go to all these ministries that Dan knows? The battered women's shelter, the orphanage, the hospice, the homeless shelter, and give them money to buy them things, spend our money on felt needs, short-term felt needs, or a family house, long-term house. What are we going to do? I went to the group, guess what? Split 50-50. I didn't know what to do. I was asking, seeking, knocking, and I know this sounds crazy. I had a dream, and in the dream, Jake Myers was very happy. He was building a house. And there I was, and Ann was there, and my kids, we were pounding in a house. I didn't see any family, but we were just there building a house. And I woke up smiling. I turned to Ann. I said, "We're building a house." And she was like, What are you talking about? But I just knew it. I knew that God spoke to me. And I know that sounds crazy, but like God did it for Solomon and he did it for me. And so ask, seek, knock.